Go.
Hi folks, I'm International Master John Watson. This is Ask the Master on ICC TV. The main point of this show is to provide a forum for you listeners, hopefully chess players, to ask questions about chess and the chess world. You can send these questions in advance so that I can look at them throughout the week.
Hi folks, I'm International Master John Watson.
Ask I Am
This
Watson
is
at
Ask the Master
chessclub.com.
on ICC TV. The main point of the
ASKIMWAT
is to provide a forum
for
you
at
listeners,
chessclub.com.
hopefully chess players, to ask questions about chess and the chess world. You can send these questions in advance so that I can look at them.
Another way to ask
folks,
questions
I'm
is,
International
right
Master
now on
Watson
the chat, I
at
see there's a bunch of people there already.
In fact, let me is to provide a forum
this for a
for
second.
you listeners,
chessclub. So you can ask on the chat right now, and then you can also, that's on YouTube, and then the other thing you can do is send a message to my ICC account, message John L. Watson, JOHN LWATSON on ICC. I guess the last way is to leave a question after the show. So you can ask on the chat right now, and then you can archive version of this YouTube broadcast down below the YouTube broadcast. And I got one of those, I think, last week, and I didn't even notice it because usually there aren't any. And so I will be answering that probably next week. But go ahead and put them there if you happen to just sort of stumble across this broadcast and want to ask questions. I'll keep an eye on that. Look at this chat. Okay. Broadcast down below the YouTube broadcast. And I got one of those trapped last week. That'll be fun. We'll take a look at that. Okay, let's see. First of all, I want, though, to cover some stuff that I didn't cover before, or questions that I got. I got something, okay, this is kind of fun, about the Colorado counter. The question is, here's how it's stated. I have recently been using the Nimzowitsch defense against 1e4 as my repertoire. After 1e4, knight c6, that's the Nimzowitsch defense, knight f3. Now 2d4 is the normal move here. And then black can play either e5 or d5. And d5 is really the pure Nimzowitsch defense favorite.
Sorry, John, there is a bad echo.
And it's not a bad opening. It's an interesting irregular opening. One problem people have with this is that a lot of people do play 2 knight f3, hoping that black simply transposes. Well, why would you be playing the Nimzowitsch defense with 1 knight c6 if you could play e4, e5 anyway? In other words,
Sorry, John, there is a bad echo.
by e4, e5. It's not a bad opening. It's an interesting irregular opening. Knight f3, knight c6. So why bother with 1 knight c6? Well, you could do it. You could want to play e5 anyway because at least you're avoiding some things. You're avoiding e4, e5 anyway. Well, let me just show you. You're avoiding.
Sorry, John, there is a bad echo.
e4, e5. It's not a bad opening. It's an interesting irregular opening. Sorry, so why bother with actually? Let me see. What are you avoiding from white's point of view? That's what I should be asking. You're avoiding the king's gambit. You're avoiding the bishop's opening. Well, let me just show you. You're avoiding.
Sorry, John,
You're
there is
avoiding
a bad echo.
maybe c3, a sort of version of the Ponzani. You're avoiding the Vienna game. So you are avoiding a few lines. None of those are very scary, though. So probably they aren't worth worrying about too much. I'm just checking about the sound stream here. I also hear an echo. Let me try and maybe c3, a sort of version of the Ponzani. You're avoiding the Vienna game. So you are avoiding a few lines. None of those are very scary, though. So probably they aren't worth worrying about too much. I'm just checking about the sound stream here. I also hear an echo. Let me try and c3, sort of version of the Ponzani. You're avoiding the Vienna game. So you are avoiding a few lines. None of those are very scary. So probably they aren't worth worrying about too much. I'm just checking about the sound stream here. I also hear an echo. Let me try and c3, sort of version of the Ponzani. You're avoiding the Vienna game. So you are avoiding a few lines. None of those are very scary. So probably they aren't.
Jordan, how are you doing? Are you still getting a sound problem? Because this should be just fine. Just saying, given where I put the microphone.
You're avoiding the Vienna game. So you are avoiding a few lines. None of those are very scary.
Well, I guess I'll continue. Keep complaining if you keep getting the echo. I'm happy to hear that and try to do something else. Let me show you the end of this. Or this thing. So what I did is I got together a game. So the question is what to do about 2 knight f3 if you don't want to play e5. he plays the center counter against that, or he's tried it. So he's heard about it in this position, which was the main weapon of I am Doug Root. Let me show you the end. Do you believe in this opening? If not, please give me a good recommendation. So what I did is I got together a three. So the question is what to do about and I guess I don't really believe in this opening. I think it weakens black too much. And let me just show you a game with some notes. I can show you why that is. Okay, that's the Colorado counter Gambit. The idea is just to get this pawn back, have pretty nice development and activity, maybe even try to win the center, sort of like a king's Gambit. I don't really believe in this opening. And in this game, white pinned the knight. Let me just show you. That's a very good move. You could also simply play here and then oppose the bishop. And why would you want to do that? Well, because these squares are weak along an open e5. It is very instructive opening because it shows why people, in a way, why people don't play this. I realize Doug Root did for a while. I doubt if he would still play it though. There's very large. You could also simply play here. It's echoing to then oppose the bishop. Why would you want to do that? Well, because these squares are weak along an open. You may have to take a. It is very instructive. Quiet. It shows why people don't play this. I realize Doug Root did for a while. That may be a little bit better. It's the audio repeater. I don't know where that is. The audio repeater on. Okay, just quickly check this. Sorry, folks. Let me go to options. Settings. It's the audio repeater. Keep sending me notes about what's going on. I'm looking for audio repeater on. Okay, just quickly check. Just try something, folks. Let me go to options. No, I don't want this. Settings. It's the audio repeater. Keep sending me notes about what's going on. I'm looking for audio repeater on. Okay, well, I should keep talking so you can at least see what's going on and tell me. Okay, so I tried to increase the volume. Yeah, the Internet Chess Club. Okay, give me a second here so that I can ask what to do about this from my guru here, so you can at least see what's going on. And tell me to go to here and ask. Okay, so I tried to increase the volume. Yeah, the Internet Chess Club. Okay, give me a second here so that I can ask what to do about this from my guru here, so you can at least see what's going on. Okay, I'll keep talking just in case. Who knows? Maybe it'll straighten out a little bit. So I tried to increase the volume. Yeah, the Internet Chess Club. Okay, give me a second here so that I can ask what to do about this from my guru here, so you can at least see what's going on. Okay, I'll keep talking just in case. Who knows? Maybe it'll straighten out a little bit. So I tried to increase the volume. Okay, let me just see here. Sorry, I'm actually off the chat now. I can hear your Skype alerts. Yeah. Well, maybe someone can tell me. Maybe even on this chat, maybe someone can tell me where this setting is. Apparently, it's on Skype. Who knows? Maybe it'll straighten out. Okay, let me look here. Sorry, I'm actually off the chat now. Get back to my front screen in Skype. I can hear your Skype alerts. A virtual cable. We need to check. Well, maybe someone can tell me. Maybe even on this chat. Oh, okay. There's a program, isn't there? Apparently, it's on Skype. Well, that's funny. It's not. According to this, it's not really open. Let me look here. Wait. Sorry, I'm actually off the chat now. Get back to my front screen in Skype. Okay, folks. Patience. Maybe I can find it. Virtual cable. We need to check. Well, maybe someone can tell me. Maybe even on this chat. Oh, okay. All programs. Apparently, it's on Skype. Well, that's funny. It's not. According to this, it's not really open. Wait. Yeah, I don't see it offhand. Front screen in Skype. Okay, folks. Patience. Maybe I can find it. Virtual cable. We need to check. Well, maybe someone can tell me. Maybe even on this chat. Oh, okay. All programs. Apparently, it's on Skype. Well, that's funny. It's not. According to this, it's not really open. Oh, close the stream. Okay. Okay, folks, give me a second. We're going to actually get off for a second and check this out. Okay? So we're going to close off for just a second, then we'll come back. Thank you very much. Thanks for your patience. Okay, I am. And you have to authorize me again or not? Okay, so I'm on now.
Hi, folks. Let me get back here. Am I on now? Can people hear me? I had a special setting set up for a broadcast, for a chess broadcast, actually, and somehow that got in the way. Aha. Okay, thank you, everybody, for your patience. I hope I've still got you in, here. This is a cute little game I'm showing, so I really hope I have you here. I'll kind of brush through the notes here, but the idea is that Black usually plays here now and tries to castle queenside, but the problem is once these bishops come off, then these squares are very weak. So, and it's very easy to stop the move e5. See, I have bishop here, and that move really can't be played. So sometimes Black even plays here, but the problem with that is that he's moved the bishop again. This bishop has free reign, and the light squares are very weak after just this move and this move. Anyway, so really, White's got a pretty good game there, which gives you a reason not to play this, but not an overwhelming reason. The real problem is what happens in this game. How are we doing, by the way? It's too quiet still. Okay, I can get closer if you think it's too quiet. I think we fixed the echo, and now maybe that shouldn't be too quiet. Hopefully that'll be a little louder. Yeah, you could just turn up your volume. That's a good point. Hey, Jordan, turn up your speakers. Okay, so where are we here? Oh yeah, so here's how the game went. Bishop b5, threatening knight e5, and knight e5 threatens both knight takes c6 and queen h5 check. So he tries to answer that. White plays knight e5 and then play queen d6, the only kind of really reasonable move. And I mean, you could play bishop back to d7, but that's pretty depressing. Because for one thing, there's just capturing followed by queen h5 check. Is very strong, as you probably all are aware of that kind of position. So Black plays queen there. White simply defends the knight. And now he threatens things like queen f3 and threatens things like c4, and you'll see how that goes. Notice that Black can't castle queenside because knight f7 wins massive material, wins like a rook or something. That's not quite true, is it? Actually, let me look at that for a second. That's not completely true because of queen e6 check. So maybe now the problem is, look how weak the king side is. That would threaten check followed by some sort of overwhelming attack. And that's very hard to stop. And by the way, now knight f7 is a threat and queen a6 is a threat. Okay, so there we go. I hadn't noticed that before. So castles is legal or possible, but not very good. Okay, so instead he just brings out a knight, White castles, and Black challenges the knight in the center. That seems like a very reasonable move. It's hard to see what else he can do. If he tries to get rid of the bishop, it's just too slow. White's got this big positional advantage plus extra time. And White plays here, threatening knight g6, winning the rook because that attacks the queen. The queen might come out, but then White ignores the attack on the b pawn, brings another piece out, and very soon everything is just falling apart. Now a rook's going to come over. I believe this actually happened in a game, which is what I'm showing here. Black played here, White played here, Black retreated, White played up, Black came back, can't come to d6 because of knight g6. White played here, and now there was no stopping rook b8 check or knight takes c6. Everything's falling apart. So it's very easy to lose a quick game in this opening. And you'll see that in this game, because what happens is instead of a6, Black plays knight back, trying to get rid of that, trying to challenge that outpost on e5. Very logical, it just doesn't work very well. White plays that move. Now there are better moves here, or other moves here that are very strong. For example, you could simply play get rid of one of the knights, play bishop here, and then if he takes that, look at that outpost. Tremendously strong. You'll never get your pieces out as Black. Big positional advantage. That's one way to play. Another way to play is bishop f4 right away, and another way to play is c4 right away, which is very hard to meet, because if Black starts playing things like taking like this, then he runs into this move. And we'll see that in a second. We'll see that idea. Okay, so after knight d7, White plays knight c3, and Black says, good, I'll take a pawn, and I'll get rid of that bind on e5. The problem is now he's lost a ton of development. And the rook comes in with tempo, and now the best move here is there's another game where someone just took on that square and won the game, but this is even better, because this attacks the bishop straight away. And when Black defends that, then White plays there. Now the queen's running out of room. Tries that move, and White plays a very nice move, this move now. trying to drive him away from that pawn, and that now black actually resigns after only 13 moves. This shows the dangers of playing this way with all this looseness in the center. He actually resigns. Now, why does he resign? Well, there's no squares for the queen besides, okay, there's this one, but then there's knight takes, and now there's no squares, and knight takes check is going to happen. For example, queen takes, bishop, knight takes, wins the queen. And anything else, white plays knight takes c7 anyway, because it's supported by the bishop. Or the same exact thing happens if black plays here, attacking the queen and attacking knight c7. Or if black plays here, you can simply roll your last piece into attack against the queen. The queen has to go somewhere crazy, I don't know, maybe here. Now knight takes, every one of white's pieces is out, and there's nothing black can do about knight takes or bishop takes, and just a kill. So it's a 13-move game, so that's kind of an interesting example. Now the question, his question, I should answer, because the Nimzowitsch defense can still be kind of fun. The question is, how do you play it? Well, if you don't want to play e5, which maybe is the best choice objectively, but then you have to study a lot of theory. There's some other options. This has been played some, but I really don't trust it. The idea is to attack the pawn and then attack it again, but then your knight gets stuck on the side of the board, and you can just imagine that this is not much fun. Bishop b5 is a good move, for example. The knight over here really just isn't very good. So that doesn't work very well. What are some other moves? This is possible, just kind of get your pieces out, but of course you're losing a lot of space. So that's one thing you could play if you absolutely need something else to play. Let me see what else I have here. Just to see what notes I made here on possible things to play. So I'm not too thrilled with either one of those. Some people play a Scandinavian with the knight already on c6. It's possible to play this way. That's a Scandinavian defense where black's already played knight to c6, and now you could play, for example, queen a5. It's playable, but it's dangerous and difficult. Usually black likes to retain the option of playing c6 instead of knight c6. So that's not really a completely satisfactory solution either. So the most common, by far the most common alternative is this one. Now black's ready to play this if he wants to, or just bring his knight out without e5. So white usually plays here, taking over the center. And then if black plays here, there's something very cute that can happen. White can play this move, and now white's got a big space advantage, and if black has to go back, white's going to have space and development. So you might say, well, why doesn't white play here? There's a nice little trick here. Knight takes knight, gives up the queen, but then check. Now you'll notice that if he goes here, he's losing massive material, or even check first. Actually, that would work even better, maybe. Check followed by knight takes check. And then you can take this and then take the rook. So he has to play c6, forced move. And now the threat is to play either c7 check, winning the queen, or c takes b is also very strong. And it just turns out here that white gets tremendous amounts of material for the queen. The best move is probably this. And then we play here. And now we get the queen back. So this is a case where you can get the queen back here. And what white does now is kind of clever. White plays rook takes, and white plays knight takes with tempo attacking the rooks, and then just takes this back. And this position is quite a lot better for white, even though black managed to survive without losing a piece or anything like that. He's still a pawn down, and this position's simply good. So it's a very cute little line for white after the most natural move, bishop g4, which looks quite good, contesting the central dark squares, but d5 is a strong response. So what black should do, in answer to the question, the original question, is play there, threatening this pawn. White's probably going to just defend that. And now play here, and now there's no tricks. So this is a very interesting line. And if white plays here now, which looks very strong, threatening d5, for example, then black can simply force white to either retreat or take this. And now white's got a lead in development, but black has two bishops. This is quite playable. I would recommend playing this way as black, if you don't want to play e5 on the second move. White is still better here. White can play a move like this, but then I think you should just go ahead and don't give up too much space. Go ahead and challenge the center. And this is a well-known position. It's probably a little better for white, but it's been played a fair amount by black, and it's a playable line for black. I still like to be white here because white has space, but you can play this way. It's not impossible. So that's what I think a Nimzowitsch defense player should do. Okay, let me go to the chat. Chat questions. How am I doing with sound, by the way, folks? Is everything doing okay here? Okay, I have a trap in the Grünfeld. It goes. Okay, let's see this. Trap in the Grünfeld goes d4, knight of 6, c4, g6, knight, g3 first. Okay, bishop g7, bishop g2, d5, captures, captures. Now white often plays e4 here, and that's what you've got him playing. Knight b4 question, exclam, because of queen a4 check, right? Knight comes back, d5. Oh, my fault. I'm sorry. The other knight comes up. Yeah, this is well known from the old days. This is. I remember when I was a kid seeing this. Yeah, there's some sort of knight c2 check idea after. Okay, so d5. Now is there a b5 here? Oh, knight d3 check. Okay. King d1. Knight takes b2. Why not? Yes, that looks very good. Or bishop b2 is interesting also. Yes, bishop b2 is excellent, threatening a whole rook and also threatening a bishop down here. And you can't take it because of knight b2 check with a winning the queen. Oh, that's very cute. And I think that works too. That looks completely sound to me. I can't imagine what white should probably run away so he doesn't get forked, but this would still be strong to play here, attacking the queen. Okay, very good. There might be another trick here. Maybe I'm crazy, but it seems like there's another way for black to get out of this trap. I think it's castles, because if white plays here now, then there's no really good answer to this check, because he can't go in front of the queen. And if he goes this way, black's just better. He takes his piece back and threatens here. Yeah, so this is good. Now what should white do? I guess we should ask that question. Maybe not give the check. I think the check's actually a mistake. What white should do here is probably just get rid of that knight, right? Chase it back, then chase it again, and then maybe just bring a piece out or attack it again, one of the two. And white has a little space advantage, but it might be equal. This might be okay for black. I'm not sure. What else could white do here? Maybe just develop? Make a move like knight here. Might be a good move. Okay, interesting. That's a fun trap. It is difficult. Okay, what do we have down below? I'm going to have to catch up on a lot of chat here. Terrific Tuesday. Hello, everybody. Sorry about the time thing, the sound issue. I know why it happened now. Why is it that when masters commentate on lines on broadcast, they usually mention weak squares, pawn structures, and plans, but opening books usually don't? I think it's a matter of space with opening books a lot of times. Some opening books do talk about weaknesses a lot. I know. For example, when I write something like Play the French, I always want 100 pages more than the publisher. I demand 100 pages more. I could use 300 pages more. So the question is, why are you buying the book? And I guess you always have to decide, is my audience mainly people who want as many moves and as much analysis as possible, or a more popular audience? And in the case of most of my books, I kind of opt for analysis more than ideas. I try to give some ideas, for sure. Now, there are books out there, opening books, that give quite a few ideas, but of course they're skimping on accuracy in a sense, or thoroughness, or completeness. Okay, so let me just keep going here. It's a ploy not to go through the opening draft, that's right. Yeah. It was all a conspiracy, folks. Okay. How about 1 e4, c5, bishop c4? I responded e6, but sidelines like this deserve more explanation in books. Yeah, that's a good question. I think what you need is a starting out the Sicilian. A book like that doesn't usually cover bishop c4, and it should. There's a series called Starting Out, but there should be books that cover sort of elementary ideas in the Sicilian. Actually, Morozevich used to play this move. I remember preparing for it in the World Junior when I was preparing Tal Shaked. We had to prepare for bishop c4. It's a legitimate move. The best way in black, that's a great answer, just wanting to play d5. What Morozevich used to do is play for a3 and bishop here. So just see if I can give you an example here. Maybe knight here, pawn up, and if knight here with the idea of d5, then a3, ooh, I'm not sure about the exact timing, but something along these lines. Of course, here that would be a pretty good option to take there. How did he play this? I don't really remember exactly. Maybe in this position, still one other move. I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe it was against another order like g6 that he played with a3 and bishop a2. Anyway, e6 is a good answer, and why don't books go over these things? I'm not quite sure. And it's quite easy to explain. The idea is that you're really cutting this bishop off by having it bite on granite, as they say. This is granite. And what white really wants is to get that bishop on a long diagonal where it's effective. Oh, this is where he played it. My fault, actually. I think Nimzowitsch played something else first. You know, for example, like that, and then bishop c4, so that it would take 2 moves to get this in. Okay. So e6 is a really good answer to bishop c4 right away. I'm not even sure why white would play this line, but you found the right answer anyway. Hello, Rich. Okay, let me keep going with stuff that I've gotten from previous weeks. Last week there was a discussion. Let me just put this up here. Someone asked, oh, actually, this was, I was sent this. Someone asked about bishop d6 and the 4 knights. We remember we were talking about the Belgrade. I think the 4 knights is a very interesting opening, actually, for white. It's just some way to get out of the Ruy Lopez and Joko Piano stuff. We talked about this Belgrade Gambit. For 2 weeks now, we've been talking about it, and I think we kind of covered that. And now there's a question about this, and what would happen if black played this move? And I'm not sure if the question is from black's point of view or white's, but I think it might have come from just seeing the game Hari Krishna Carlsen, which was just played in Viscount, where Carlsen played this move. So we have the highest rated player in the world playing, and the world champion playing this move, so it must be vaguely respectable in any case. So I thought I'd show a game with that, a fun game, and not just the Carlsen game. The Carlsen game went d3. Let me just say what happened there. It got, I think the reason, okay, in this game white plays a3, which has been played a couple of times, and here's what I think's going on. After the move in the Carlsen game, black could have played here, and then this really looks extremely harmless to me. I think black's doing just fine here. It's kind of like a Ruy Lopez where black has the bishops and a decent, it's actually a pretty decent pawn structure. But if white retreats now, going either way, he's going to lose his bishop pair because the pawn here would be taken in a lot of positions, but it's defended now. So I think that's why people play a3. Now that didn't happen in the Carlsen game, by the way. d3 happened. But I think the reason they play a3 is because now you could go either way, bishop here or just bishop back. But in any case, the bishop has a square to go to back here. And the knight's a little offside. So I think that's why a3 is played in this main game. Now, just as a side thing, what happened in the Carlsen game? D3 and a couple interesting games here, but the one with Carlsen went like this, and now a3 to save that bishop. So he is using the same idea, but he wasn't scared of it earlier. He wasn't worried about losing the bishop earlier. And now the bishop moves because this is well protected by the rook. So the bishop can afford to get out of the way of that pawn, is the idea. And Carlsen played a good move here. I'm not sure if white's playing this that well. That's an excellent move. And that immediately at least equalized. White retreated, and black played here. And now black's ready to play d5. And white did manage to get roughly an equal game here, but black was perfectly okay. I don't know if I want to go further with that. I don't think so, because we've already used a lot of time with the technical issues here. Okay, so in our game, which is more fun than that, we have this move. Okay, there's the 4 knights. There's bishop e5, which is the main move. Bishop d6, which is now a popular response. a3 first. Black castled. White played d3. Now here's an issue with bishop d6, which I think is really interesting. White plays this move. Now, in one of the games that I looked up, white actually played h3 first and then g4. Here he plays it right away, and the idea is that if black takes that, this is quite a strong attack, is the idea, because black has to retreat, and then white pins this. There's quite an attack along the file. Now, how strong that is, I'm not totally sure. Knight d5 is an idea. Just castling queenside is an idea. Play queen up, castle, double rooks. Black didn't want any part of that, although it might be okay for him, but he has to defend well. So instead of that, he just played the bishop back to defend that weak square. Now maybe threatening to go there. Also, he's ready to move the pawn now. But white went ahead and attacked and took the knight and had a chance to just win a pawn because the queen is on that knight. And notice the knight had nowhere else to go. So white's actually just a pawn up. So black defended his knight. This knight came back, hitting these weak squares. So black's got two bishops and is relatively well developed, but it's not enough for a pawn, in my opinion. He tried to sort of counterattack and just get things moving on the queen side. And what white should have done is bishop e3 at some point. Real simple, just get the pieces out. And then I think he stands better, but he just played kind of slowly. Bishop d2 is a little slow. He's just not getting his pieces out. And that move was just a question mark move because it opens up his king too much. So in the end, black did fine here. He played that move, a great move. The idea of knight a4, by the way, was to stop queen check and queen takes, which would have been very strong. Getting the pawn back and hitting a lot of other pawns. But the problem is this move's now good because if he takes now, this move is just very, very strong on that pawn, on that bishop, and the king's starting to get exposed. So let me see what actually happened here. I don't think he took that. No, he tried to cover the d4 square. And now black got his pawn back and is threatening queen takes d3. And now he's pinning black up, and now he plays a very pretty move, knight f4, because of the pin on this bishop is the idea. And white moved away because his queen was attacked, and black diverted him twice. Took another pawn, threatening to queen, and maybe this was it. Maybe he resigned at this point. I don't think I have to go any further anyway. Well, maybe a little bit. Black's ahead materially, and white's position is very, very loose here. Just show you what happened here. Okay, now that knight's hanging, and he just got a new queen and ended up a piece ahead. Okay, so pretty game. And maybe we're seeing, in order to examine this position with bishop d6. Okay, so now another question I got was from, from last week's chat. I thought I'd mention, since I only gave a superficial answer. Last week's chat, we had something about knight f5 in the Scotch, and I was interested to research this. I even looked up a bunch of correspondence games because those tend to be very accurate about what's happening with these openings. So here's what we looked at. We looked at this line in the Scotch game. A lot of e4, e5 this week. This line, attacking this pawn and getting ready maybe to move the knight back there where it controls d5 and stops d5 forever. So it's a very impressive move, but I mentioned this idea, which I remembered from many, many years ago. Well, it turns out this is played quite a bit. It's quite a good move. Check, the king comes over attacking the knight. The knight has to come back, and now this nice move, which I mentioned. And now you have queen takes e4, and you also have bishop g4 ideas, and you're just getting your pieces out very quickly, maybe even d takes e4 to get your pawn back. So, and you're also threatening checkmate in one, by the way. That's the first threat. So white pretty much has to go back and defend, and then black can simply take the pawn, or he can attack again the pawn and also threaten the move knight g4. And the odd thing is white really, that's a good move by white. White can actually defend this position. I think it's only about equal, but black has won many, many games from this position just because he's the one with the attack. In practice, it's hard to defend. I think white can defend this if he plays well. But what I found is that even in correspondence chess, where you've got plenty of time to defend, it turns out that black wins a lot of games. And white just can't play accurately enough to stop the attack. Okay, now he's attacking along the file. This is tough because there's no g3 to defend against the attack. And so white retreats, which is the right thing to do. But now the queen's attacked, and now the queen's attacked again. So you can imagine things are going really wrong here. That's a check, but black simply retreats. And now there's big, big problems. One of the problems is rook down, pinning that. Another problem is bishop here, attacking the rook and attacking the pawn. And there's one other problem. In fact, let me show you what that problem is. Okay, yeah, one more move. White plays there, and black plays down, which looks very attractive, pinning this and pinning this knight, so it can't move without losing that rook. But in fact, it's quite funny. This black is a Dmitry Schneider, very strong player, 24-30 at the time. He misses a forced win. I don't know if you want to check it out for just a second, those of you watching. There's just an easy, complete forced win here. It's funny to see really strong players miss easy wins, but we do all the time. I shouldn't say we, but people do, masters do all the time. The win is this move. And actually the game's pretty much over because the threat is to take, followed by queen takes. And he can't play bishop takes because of mate. And what does that leave? That leaves queen here, something crazy like that. But then there's the queen can come back down to c1, for example. Threatening mate in 1, the knight's pinned, and white can simply pretty much resign here. Or at least he has to lose major material. There may be another win here too. I think this is an easier win actually. Just take that and now check. And now worst comes to worst, you can just take that and win a whole rook or something like that. I'd have to check this out for sure. Maybe it's easier to go like this and just go for checkmate. But you can see that black's winning this position. Okay, so anyway, in the game, he didn't find that. And white could have defended with this move, getting rid of the queen. And then the queen can't stay on the first rank. Now, of course, black still has a very good game after taking, but it's not so easy. Instead of that, white played here, which turned out to be a mistake. Because now the rook's hanging. And he won 2 pawns. So black just came out a pawn ahead with the better position and managed to convert this endgame. So I just wanted to show you that. Another of these 4 knights openings. I think 4 knights would be fun to play for white. Be an interesting thing to play as an alternative to the tried and true, but very used up and theoretical bishop b5 and bishop c4 on the 3rd move. Okay, I hope I've still got you guys on. I seem to have lost my chat. I can't blame you, given our technical problems, but someone might want to say if we're still on, just to make sure the people are still listening here. I haven't disconnected somehow. Someone want to give me a little comment here? Hello, hello? Jordan? Somebody? Rich? Whoa, I wonder if we've gotten disconnected somehow here. I don't think so, but I will check really fast. Okay. Looks like I'm still on. I don't know if from ICC we can say whether I'm still on here, still broadcasting. Let me go back. All good. Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay. What else did people send me? I have, well, this was just something from the chat last week, I think, or one of these weeks. Maybe it was even from a while ago. It's what do you think of B3 against the Sicilian? Kind of an interesting line. It's been played by some pretty good players, so it can't be that bad. It's a reasonable idea. It's probably meant mainly to discourage G6. A lot of people like to play G6 against almost all irregular Sicilians. And the idea is that if you play there, of course, he takes it. So you'd have to play either F6 or Knight F6. Now, actually, this position I'm not so sure about. I don't know if people want to play here now, and even whether that's really that great a move, or if they want to take it and double your pawns. But these doubled pawns, when black has the 2 bishops, usually aren't too dangerous. They're usually fine for black. Black can play for the move F5 now and break up the center. So, for example, something like this, sure, you control that square, you've got a big outpost, but black has the bishops, and black might just play for something like an early F5, something like this. And I suspect black's fine here. Well, actually, maybe he better play. Yeah, actually, if you take that, there's going to be a check. But in any case, black can play D6 to support that. So if it's taken, he can take back with a piece. These positions tend to be okay for black. Well, this one, actually, this guy's hanging, so I blew it. But even if he just castled or something, this kind of position tends to be about equal. So, so you could play G6 actually, even though that's what it's meant to discourage. Maybe white wants to play this move, but then black can play here, and I don't think this move is dangerous attacking the rook. It looks dangerous, but remember you're losing a lot of time here. So now you're threatening to take that, and if white takes, well, there goes some more development. Black's starting to get all his pieces out really fast. So that should be okay for black, that kind of line. So you could play G6. I think what I used to recommend against this is playing this move. Just copying white, but in a sense you're almost in a better position than white because you have a target here. And it's a little awkward for white to defend that. That move blocks off his pieces and stops him from winning the center. This knight, there's nothing that can defend that easily. The queen could come out, but that's kind of early for the queen to come out. If you advance it, you're just opening up this diagonal and wasting time for development. So the best move is probably here, just defending. But then at that point, you can simply play like a Sicilian-like position, something like maybe even knight here now. and or if you have to, just developing something. E6, but let's assume knight there works. And when white gets his pieces out somehow, I don't know how, maybe there, then you have that E6 move we talked about, followed by D5 at some point. Maybe you even want to get your pieces out first, but this is completely safe. You have your share of the center, no problem. So that's a good answer to B3. If you want a simple answer, I think B6. If you're a Sicilian player and you want a simple answer, I think B6 does everything you want, because it's slightly awkward to defend that, and black equalizes right away. Okay, so that's an answer to that question. What else do we have here? Do we have something else coming on? Okay. Something I've been promising for weeks is to talk about the exchange French, which we talked about a lot a few months ago, but never got back to. And I still get questions about it all the time. The exchange French seems to bother French players, and since everybody knows I'm a French player, I get this question quite a bit. The one line we didn't cover, if you go back and look at the old shows, there's quite a bit about the exchange variation of the French defense. That's what the exchange variation of the French defense is. And we looked at this move quite a bit, and we looked at this move a fair amount. One move we didn't look at, though, is this move, just getting that piece out. And now black, what I was going to recommend, there's different ways for black to play this, but one very easy way to play is try to get an unsymmetrical position. Now this knight might go here, so at least everything's not symmetrical. If you play this, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. People have done this for centuries, but it's very dull and very equal and not very exciting because it's not asymmetrical. To make an interesting game out of the French, exchange French, any exchange variation, you want to unbalance the position. So for example, if white tried to copy you could go either bishop g4 now, which would be unsymmetrical, or knight e7, which would be unsymmetrical. And that's a way to make the position more interesting. So instead of that, one of white's main moves now is this move c4, trying to attack the center. And there's several ways to play this, but the most obvious move is not just defending. Now it turns out if white plays here, that looks attractive at first, but actually black's very well placed because he can play b6 next. Just for example, if white makes a move like this, you play b6, and there's no real way to defend this. You almost have to capture, because if you try to defend it, your queenside falls apart with that move. That's a good maneuver worth knowing, because you can't defend that pawn because it's pinned, because the rook is going to take the other rook. So that's a way to break up that pawn structure that you should remember, because it comes up in several openings. Well, you might say, well, okay, white takes that, big deal. Well, the good thing about this now is that black has an open file, and he's able to support that move c5 here because it's defended by this pawn. He also has bishop a6 to get rid of white's good bishop here, that good bishop. And it turns out that's a very easy position for black to play. So white usually doesn't play c5. White will play a move like he does in this game here. And if white plays bishop g5, which looks attractive at first because it seems to attack this pawn, black can simply castle. And then when white takes this, you just say, wait, I'd rather have bishops and an open file. I can get this pawn back later. So this position is considered fine for black, and you'll see why in a second, because the way the main game goes is very similar. Okay, in the main game, white simply attacks this again, and now normally black can play, black can play c6 here, or black can take this pawn and let white come out. Then white has an isolated pawn, but white has good active pieces. So even though this is probably equal, black might not want to play it. So one option black has is just give up that pawn. And this is the natural answer. If white takes with the knight, this is worth knowing too. White gets an isolated pawn, but the difference is check. Now that's the only real piece you can put in front of that square. The difference here, okay, here's an isolated pawn. The difference here is that black's managed to take a couple of minor pieces off, and simplification helps black in positions where you're fighting against the isolated pawn. So white's going to be kind of uncomfortable here. I mean, the computer already gives black a small advantage here. Okay, so this is the way most good players will take the pawn. They'll just grab the pawn that way. You might say, well, why have given up a pawn? Well, it turns out it's very easy to get back. He's going to play knight here and then just take that, or if he has to, move the bishop again and just take it. So let's see how that works. White develops. Let me just show you a side variation. If white plays here, trying to defend that pawn, black plays here, attacking the bishop. The bishop retreats. and white plays check, and that's a little bit awkward for white because he has to put his bishop on a passive square to stop the check. Then black can play, for example, here, and he starts attacking that square a couple of times and weakening the position. And so that's a very easy way to equalize, as it turns out. One thing black can do here, for example, is play even probably rook takes. Well, he can play knight takes too. It turns out they're both equal. But that's one way he can play, because once he takes again here, it's a fork. So you won back your pawn, and you're going to win that rook. And that's pretty much an even position. Maybe black, but black can still play it for a win. It's an unsymmetrical position. It's an interesting position. So that's bishop c4. Without wasting too much time, let me just show you what happens if he just develops instead. It just brings a piece out. And now white stops this move, bishop g5. Doesn't have to do that. You can just play knight b6 and allow bishop g5, but in this game he stops bishop g5. Now plays knight b6, attacking this for a second time. And white moves forward. It's hard to find out what other move to make. You can't really defend this anymore. And the thing about the isolated pawn this time is that bishop's not very active. White's pieces are not very active here. So usually when you get an isolated pawn, you want your pieces to be active. Well, so that's not really happening here. Okay, so black's now established that white has an isolated pawn, and he's got an asymmetrical position. This should be about equal, this kind of position. Okay, I don't really like that move, but he wants to get the two bishops. He wants to attack that bishop. It's easier to just support that piece, or even play bishop to e6. But let's see what happens in the game, because it's kind of interesting. Bishop comes back, queen comes up, hitting the knight for a second time. And then the bishop opposes this long light-squared bishop. Notice this is white's bad bishop because it's blocked by his own pawn in the center. So black's trying to exchange off his good bishop. Well, white kind of chickens out. Maybe white should take this here. But white was scared of the fact that when black takes that way, it supports that square again and opens up this file against the king. This is a very unclear position, probably about equal. So white tries to attack the king instead, but he's starting to waste a lot of time. And black opposes that. Okay, now white attacks the queen with his knight, but that has a little problem, which is black is now developing and attacking the last rank. All of a sudden, black's ahead in development. Okay, black comes in with a strong knight, and this position is considered a little bit better for black, because white no longer has the bishop pair either. I'm sorry, that's not maybe those are great moves. This game was drawn actually at this point, so maybe it's only equal. I think black could have gotten a little advantage playing, how was it? Well, anyway, I think black's a little bit better. Oh, I see. Yeah, I thought taking that knight was a little funny. Maybe after this would give black a little advantage. Keep your bishops, attack the knight again, and this would probably happen, these moves here. And then if white tries to play this very clever move, bishop here, now what's the idea of that? If takes, then check, winning the queen. See, these two pieces are forked. That looks very good for white, except black can just make a move. Like we'll bring a rook over to the e file and stand well. For example, just this move. Now threatening rook takes followed by queen takes. So white pretty much has to take that. And this position's difficult for white, oddly enough, because black is so active. It's a very easy, active position to play. So, for example, if the bishop retreats, which makes sense, right, because the bishop's in some sort of danger there, black can just bring the knight into the center with a really nice game. Maybe only equal, but black has compensation for a pawn. Okay. Okay. Well, do we have any questions from the chat? Since I went through four chat things for a change, I have another thing. I have two other things from before, but let's just maybe pause for a moment and see if we get anything more on the chat, because I've kind of ignored the chat most of this week. Anything going on? Was there something I missed up above? Let me check that. I think I lost a lot of people when we had the audio problem. I think people got bored. Was there something early that I missed? Let me just see. Okay, no, the Grünfeld trap was the only analytical line. There was the question about the why books don't give ideas more. Actually, quite a few of these lectures don't give very many ideas either that I've seen. I like to. I try to show a lot of reasons why people are making the moves that they're making. But I don't think the lectures I've watched by other people very often, I'd say maybe half of them don't really do that very much, and more of them should do it. But I think they also are just trying to give you a complete repertoire and hoping that you understand the ideas, the general ideas. So, okay, well, if there's nothing more going on right here, okay, then let me do another one. Okay, that's that Queen's Gambit one. That's going to take too long to answer, I'm afraid. But I could do that. I'll tell you, we could get started on that. That was 144. Let me just check that. I got a question about the Bishop F4 Queen's Gambit again. After we talked about books, I don't know if you remember, we talked about books on the Queen's Gambit. And the question was, okay, this is a Queen's Gambit by transposition. There, let me just show you that. That would be the same thing as going here, here. That's the Queen's Gambit proper right there. That attacks the center, that defends the center, and then white could bring up another knight out, for example. And you would get the position that we got in this game, which was this. Okay, and black just develops. This is the normal old-fashioned Queen's Gambit. And white plays Bishop F4, which is very, very popular. It wasn't popular for years. Bishop G5 was played overwhelmingly in these kinds of positions. And maybe Bishop G5 will be revived again. Just for the record, just so you know, one of the reasons you don't see Bishop G5 as much these days is because it turns out, contrary to what I used to think, that black can actually simplify here with what's called the Lasker variation. And this is actually done pretty well. It's very hard for white to get any advantage against this. And that's one of the main reasons why white switched from Bishop G5 to Bishop F4. He just found it difficult to play against this system. Not that black's better, but just that it's hard to get an advantage. And the other system that's been very popular for many years is this Tartakower system. That's one of the other ones, the other reasons. And white has trouble getting an advantage against this, but I think this isn't really the problem because there's many ways for white to get an interesting game against this. The problem with the knight e4 line is that things get simplified very quickly in this position. I still don't mind playing against this. If you want a system against this, I think you should just go ahead and play the traditional move. And then what black usually does is plays here and this move and captures this and then plays here, and the idea is to play for either c5 or e5 for black. It is considered equal. I wouldn't mind playing this for white. One of the ways to play it is that if black plays this move, which is the most popular one, white can sneak back here and try to attack on the queen side. Probably doesn't have any real advantage, but there's enough to play for to keep things going. Just so you know, I don't know, that's a long digression, but that's kind of why people aren't playing Bishop G5 as much. So in this game, Bishop F4 is played, and the question was what to do as black against Bishop F4. Well, normally white plays this first, and it's going to transpose. After that move, black's been playing this move a lot, and that allows this move, for example, and black's been playing this move quite a bit. But what I was going to say is that besides those moves, which are very solid but probably a little better for white, you can also play the classical move here. And then white usually takes this because he doesn't want to get an isolated pawn. And then white plays here with the idea of attacking. And if black plays here, white plays here with the idea of playing rook over. And black often plays the move queen a5. Now keep that in mind, and I'll go back to the game. And it just turns out that it comes to the same thing. c5, he captures it. And we're going to get the same position. In fact, we're at the same position now. And black plays this move, queen a5. This is the old move, and white was considered to have some advantage here for a long time. Although this has been played recently by some very strong players as black, but somehow white keeps getting small advantages. And this game had a new idea, or not this particular game, but very recently this new idea came up, which was to play here, which was originally played by Karpov against Korchnoi in the World Championship. And let me see about questions here. I could finish this last week. Discussed the Hedgehog last week. A couple of authors mentioned they thought Shipov's book wasn't adequate. Do you agree? Yeah, let me talk about that. I'll get to this next week because this is actually a fairly long game and we're almost out of time. So that'll be an introduction to what we'll do next week. Let's check some chat questions first. I feel like I've ignored the chat a little bit. Okay, so we're talking about this hedgehog, and we're talking about Shipoff's book. Suba has a book on the hedgehog too, and there's a very recent book, a big book on the hedgehog. I can't remember the author. Maybe it is Shipoff. The hedgehog can come up many different ways, but this is sort of your basic idea. Is that black plays this at some point, and white usually plays d4 at some point, like this, and then takes with the queen usually, and then black often plays this. This is called the hedgehog structure. Let's just have white make a move. That's not necessarily the best move, but playing the pawns here, feeding, shadowing the bishop, and playing the bishop here, that's called the hedgehog. This is the hedgehog structure where those pawns are for black. Okay, yeah, I don't think there is a particular book on the hedgehog. It's very easy to talk about the hedgehog in general terms because a lot of times you get these Maroczy binds. Sometimes you don't, but in any case, it's easy to talk about black's ideas, and that's why it's popular to talk about. Whether there's a really good book on it, I'm not so sure. Like Suba's book, for example, is too hard to follow. It's not well organized. It's got some great games in it, wonderful games, and it's got some good ideas in it, but it's hard to get a particular repertoire from it, or it's a little hard to follow. At least for me, it's hard to follow. And Shipoff, I'm not sure. I sort of have glanced at all the books on the hedgehog, but I think I know quite a lot about the hedgehog as white and black, and so I don't really need a book, and so, or I haven't seen anything that had more analysis or more original ideas than I already kind of knew about. But you could certainly, I'm sure they're reasonable. I'm sure you can use those books. I'm interested in the Sicilian Najdorf. Whenever I can play as black to gain an advantage would be appreciated. Okay, the Sicilian Najdorf, unfortunately, you can't talk about, I mean, I can show you what it is. I mean, I can show the other people what it is. I'm sure you know what it is. First of all, you have to get there, so you have to know your sidelines. But here's the Najdorf. One problem with the Najdorf, it's sort of a lifetime project. You do have to learn a lot of lines. Especially you have to learn the very critical lines, the bishop g5, because you can get bowled over. You know, black doesn't have much development here. So it's easy to get bowled over by white playing very quickly things like queen f3 and castles queenside and e5 or f5 or just attacking the king very quickly. So you have to memorize a fair amount to play the Sicilian Najdorf, in my opinion. The other thing is there's so many lines against it. There's this just playing very classically like that. There's playing with g3, which is fairly popular right now. There's playing with f4. You have to know, even though it's not very popular, you still have to kind of know it because it's the same problem. There can be a quick attack against your against your king, so you have to be a little bit careful to at least know these lines. And there's the move that tons of players are playing right now, which is just h3 followed by g4 and then often g5. So you probably have to study that too. A lot of the top players are playing this h3 move, which Fischer originally played. Nigel Short beat Caruana. Yes, that was very interesting. That was fun and a fun game. I think Nigel played very, very accurately, and he got a good opening, and then just really didn't let Caruana go. Hello, John Hartman. Maybe if you Americans had a grandmaster like Trump wants, you might win against Trump. Yes, yes, a great comment. Trump said we don't have any grandmasters, and we have what, 3 right now? Live ratings, we have 3 of the top 6 players in the world, including number 2 Wesley So, and I think number 6 is Nakamura, which leaves Caruana himself, who's number 3 at this point. So Americans seem to have a fair number of top players right now, and even though Donald Trump didn't bother as usual to read about it or look it up, he just kind of shot his mouth off. He's not good with the facts. Facts are not his forte. He doesn't read books. That doesn't help. He doesn't read, which is a problem. But you know, be that as it may, it's good, maybe even good publicity to have American chess criticized by the president, because then people will look at it and go, "Wow, American chess is really doing really well." So maybe it turned out to be a good thing after all. Okay. So let me see. I guess we're pretty much towards the end. Yeah, we've gone over an hour now. I don't want to start that other question because it's a little too long. In fact, the 2 other questions I have in front of me are both pretty long. So I hope that's good enough for this week. Thanks for coming on. Really sorry about the audio difficulties, and I do know why they happened, so they shouldn't happen again. It had to do with another broadcast I was making where I had to make a special setting, and I should have unset that, but I didn't. So thanks everybody for listening, and I hope you managed to stick through all that and make it through. No more questions, right? Yeah. Um, exactly. Okay, thanks everybody, and I will catch you guys next week, I hope.